Good evening and welcome to my How Healthy Are You weekly educational call. My name is Dr. Thomas Brewer. I'm a PhD chemist. And for this call, I'm going to be answering a rather long question all about the gut microbiome. Now, this question was asked by Robert and Joanna, and I figured I would have to devote an entire call to the answer. So one of the questions was, what happens if you have occasional days where you just feel ill, brain fog, upset stomach, etc.? Now, sometimes that is due to simply consuming foods in which you are allergic. I have a blood allergy test. Actually, it's a food allergy test, but it utilizes a few drops of blood. The ones I have now, we only need 5 drops of blood, so we need to fill up 5 little circles. But it's hard to know what you're allergic to, especially when it comes to food. And one of the hints is that you'll either start to have a runny nose or a sore throat, something like that. And that's a dead giveaway that you have a food allergy. Sometimes it's hard to figure out because your meal may consist of 3 different foods and you can't figure out which one of these you're allergic to. You can take the test, or you can start just eating one food at a time, and if you'll notice the symptom occur when you're eating one food, not another, and then you know you're allergic to that food. Sometimes it's good to do both just so you know for sure how bad your food allergy is on essentially a relative scale. So that's one explanation to those sorts of feelings. Now, if you're real careful with what you eat and then you still have that, the concept is it could be what's known as a die-off, or essentially a detox reaction as a result of taking enzymes, probiotics, or even eating foods that are very high in enzymes or probiotics, meaning you shock your body by eating a lot of fruits, vegetables, salads, smoothies, things like that. So that is not common if you've been taking enzymes a while. A while would mean, say, at least 1 or 2 months. You shouldn't be having any more of those die-off or detox type reactions. So the issue for Joanna is going to be more of a food allergy or a probiotic issue, and that's where we get into the gut microbiome. And so lately there's been more and more articles about the gut microbiome. It used to be if you mentioned it, nobody knew what you were talking about, but thanks to COVID-19, people are a lot more interested in their immune system. And part of the immune system is your gut microbiome, meaning the probiotic bacteria that reside in your stomach, your small intestine, and your large intestine. So this is considered a microbiome because there's good probiotic bacteria and there's also bad parasitic bacteria, but we need both. We can't have 100% probiotic bacteria. We need this balance. Now, I still do. I have a YouTube video on probiotic versus prebiotics. So I believe the title is Probiotics versus Prebiotics. And in that, I mentioned that prebiotics are just the food for the probiotics. And the way to consume prebiotics, because there's absolutely no need to buy them, you just eat fruits and vegetables, and mainly vegetables. Vegetables are really the best prebiotics. Mushrooms are way up there on the list of good, healthy prebiotics. But most vegetables will feed the probiotic bacteria. And when you do that, your gut microbiome will be in a better state of balance, because the parasitic bacteria easily can outnumber the probiotic bacteria, and that's the imbalance. So we're constantly struggling to get enough probiotics into our system and to feed them. So you can take a probiotic supplement. I recommend that on a maintenance basis, typically 1 probiotic per day. If there's a problem, I recommend 3 probiotics per day until the problem's gone, and then a maintenance of 1 per day. But that's still not enough. You still have to make sure you feed your probiotics, and that's why it's very good for us to eat vegetables, along with the other well-known reasons that vegetables are much better for our heart, and there's much lower chance of dying from heart disease when you consume a lot of vegetables. So enzymes and probiotics, when taken in a fairly large amount, if you jump the gun, you can get that die-off and that detox-type reaction where you really feel miserable. But if it's happening later, it's most likely not enough probiotics, either consuming them or feeding them with prebiotics, which would be vegetables. And then, of course, you can just take more probiotics. Now, something to consider, I hear this a lot. People say, I'm eating well. And that's such a vague concept, because it's hard to know what's ideal for each person on any given day and in any given year of their life, and where they are in life and the aging process. So as a standard of comparison, what I'd like everyone to know is your ultimate meal would be a smoothie with, say, 80% vegetables, 20% fruit, blended with plenty of water, just like in my smoothie recipes, and blended silky smooth. So you're using a blender for 1 to 2 minutes, and there's plenty of water in there, so it's not thick. And when you consume high-quality smoothies, what will happen is your stools, your waste, will look unique, and that's the perfect meal. The perfect stool is a result of good meals. And it surprises people that our stools should be 8 to 12 inches, and maybe even longer, but let's just say 8 to 12 inches, with a visible curve, which is the curve from the colon, and rather thick, but usually if something's that long, it is going to be thick. And I have people tell me, well, that can't be right. I've never had a bowel movement that looks like that. My answer is that's the problem. Dry, round ball stools from slow digestion all the way down to runny stools due to parasitic bacteria. The food doesn't spend enough time in the gastrointestinal system. And I went over this in a previous educational call, so you can refer back to it. But thinking of a high-quality smoothie, high in vegetables, 80%, let's say, you'll notice the resulting bowel movement will be the way it should be. And I'm not saying you need to have smoothies all day, every day, but it's a good idea to try to have one smoothie a day. Even if you can't quite achieve that, it's a good goal, or at least every other day. So that takes care of another group of questions that was presented. Now, another question that came up, and it was related to something I talked about previously, was the Aloe Max, which is a cell regenerator, really good for irritable bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, etc. The question was, will that work for leaky gut? And I talk about leaky gut in my YouTube video, Probiotics versus Prebiotics. And the answer is yes. Yes, Aloe Max is a great cell regenerator. And what leaky gut really means is the parasitic bacteria are getting out of the gut. They're getting out of the gastrointestinal system or the gut microbiome area, and then we see them in the blood during a blood microscopy. Well, consuming Aloe Max will then give you a much faster rate of healing the area where the parasitic bacteria are able to leave the gut. So another question that came out of this was the relationship between the gut microbiome and the immune system. So if you think of your immune system, the main two components are the white blood cells and the gut microbiome, which is the probiotic bacteria there. So they're totally different species. White blood cells are blood cells, and probiotic bacteria are bacteria. But they do work together as part of our immune system. It's an entire system in the body. And the probiotic bacteria actually release enzymes that enhance the white blood cells. So there's your link between the gut microbiome, probiotic bacteria that is, and the white blood cell part of the immune system. So probiotic bacteria release enzymes. Enzymes help the white blood cells. So another question that came up is, well, if probiotics are good for our gut microbiome, then what do we do for our white blood cells? And so I've said this lots of times, Steromax. Everyone out there should be taking 3 Steromax per day until this COVID-19 situation is under control, whether it's through vaccines, which I am not a proponent of, or if we have enough herd immunity, so there's enough antibodies out there from people that have survived the COVID-19. Now those people are people you want to hang out with, because the potential problem of infecting someone with COVID-19 after this person survives, it's reversed. Now the antibodies that they have is something you want to be infected with. I hate to even use the word infection. They're essentially walking vaccines. And it's unfortunate our medical system does not share this information with everyone. But once all this is over, I recommend people can decrease their dosage of Steromax unless they still have smaller inactive white blood cells. But I normally have people decrease their Steromax intake to about 1 per day instead of 3 per day when we're outside of the cold and flu season, which is typically April all the way through September. But now we're in the cold and flu season, which is the October through March period. So we're back to the 3 Steromax per day. 2020 was a unique year because I never told people to drop down to 1 Steromax per day, because this flu season was somewhat unique with COVID-19. You always want to have very strong and active white blood cells, especially this year. So if you get COVID-19, you would be able to fight it off very easily. And it's unfortunate that everyone doesn't know this, but at least the people on the call and your families are going to get to know that. The final question was concerning microbiome testing. So when I look at someone's blood under the microscope, I can see parasitic bacteria, yeast, and fungus, all of which got into the bloodstream through leaky gut, and or of some sort. Now, sometimes the fungus can get into our blood just through breathing and through our lungs. But most of the time it's passed through the gastrointestinal system. So there are testing protocols to determine the composition of the gut microbiome. I am not familiar with them, but they sound good. It sounds like a good idea. I'm usually a proponent of testing. It's just what you do with the information. So most people are going to do well just by drinking a smoothie close to every day and taking 1 probiotic per day and eating lots of fruits and vegetables. And the more meat you eat, the more fruits and vegetables you need to eat to counteract the effects of animal products. So when one gets a microbiome test, that will be a snapshot of what's going on in their gastrointestinal system, but it will completely change in just a few days. And so while I think it would be nice to know the composition of the probiotic bacteria and the parasitic bacteria, I believe it's just a temporary number and something you can alter with diet. And so I believe that answered all of the questions. I will be hosting another educational call next Monday. If you have questions, please phone or email them to me before this Friday. And as always, thanks for listening.